So I'm working with Jenny and Cesar and others through Beneficial Bio to help bring biotechnologies that are in the public domain to the awareness of people who would use them. And so what I'm going to talk about here is the relationship between patented material and the public domain, and how you can look at a patent and know whether or not it is expired and therefore freely available to use the technology that's described within. First, a disclaimer, I have to do this. This is for informational purposes only, and it's not for legal advice. So if you do have specific legal challenges, you should speak with someone who could help you with that. So I only have 10 minutes, and we're going to go through a lot in 10 minutes, but I've made a handout of these slides so that you can readily look back on them if they're interesting to you. So I'm going to fly through this material fairly quickly. Intellectual property, WIPO has a definition. It's creations of the mind, inventions, artistic works, images, designs. There are many IP systems. Patents is just one of the intellectual property systems that exist, but that's the one that we're going to focus on today. So patents are a government-granted exclusive right for a limited term, and if someone infringes your patent, you can receive money damages for that. The government granted aspect of it is important because it also means that they are jurisdictional. They're only valid in the country in which you filed them. So if you filed a patent in the United States, it's valid in the United States. If you file a patent in Britain, it is valid in Britain. But there's no such thing as a global patent. And so where you are working is important. I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of US patent law. It's very similar in many respects to other country patent laws. They're trying to make them more similar all the time, but these are specific to the US. To be awarded a patent on technology, you must show the patent office that it's useful, that it's novel, no one ever thought of it before, and that it's not obvious. It wouldn't have been obvious to a person of skill in the art to do what you did. You have to write it in sufficient detail to enable someone to be able to practice your invention, including a best mode. So if you know the best way to do your invention, you have to disclose that to the patent office. Importantly, patents confer a negative right. You don't actually have the right to practice your patented invention. You have the right to prevent others from patenting. It's kind of twisted that way. And it lasts a limited period of time. And we're going to go into that in some detail. There was a change in the patent law in the US that went into effect on June 8th of 1995. So if your patent was filed before then, it's 17 years from date of issue. If it's after then, it's 20 years from earliest priority. And I will walk you through specific examples so that that will not be Greek anymore. The framing that I'd like you to think about patents is not their exclusivity, but they are a tool to move technology and information that might otherwise be held as a trade secret into the public domain. It's lasting for a limited term, but that's the quid pro quo of the patent system. Disclosure of your technology for a limited period of exclusivity, after which it goes into the public domain. And so what is the public domain? Public domain is technology that's available for anyone to use without royalty payments. And I'm working on a project with Jenny and others on the Public Domain Gazette. If you haven't visited the site already, I urge you to. These are technologies that are in the public domain that are available for anyone to use, and you can discover them at our Public Domain Gazette site. So how does technology enter the public domain in the first place? There's two basic ways. One is we call it born free, and the other is off patent. For born free, and I've given an example of each. It's genuinely, typically innovations that people intentionally place into the public domain. But just because you want to make it into the public domain doesn't mean it necessarily does. You have to do that in such a way that it prevents other people from patenting similar inventions. And so, for example, with the open flexure microscope, they made it publicly available. You can visit their website. They give you all kinds of details for how to build it. And they also published a description that had enough detail in it that it would preclude the novelty or non-obviousness of a subsequent patent. So it prevents patenting. So that's a very nice example of born-free technology. The other way that technology enters the public domain is to come off patent. And the example that I'm showing here is US patent number blah, blah, for green fluorescent protein. And this was the original very broad-based patent that was filed by Columbia University on innovation by Martin Chalfie and Douglas Prasher. It has been in the public domain since February of 2013, and it has endured its entire lifetime. So that technology is squarely in the public domain. So how do we know how technology comes off patent? There are basically two major ways. One is the patent simply has outlasted its limited term. So in the United States, before June 8th of 1995, if your patent was filed before then, it's 17 years from the date of issue. If it's on or after June 8th, it's 20 years from earliest priority. But there's a second way that technology comes off patent, and that is if the patent holder fails to pay the maintenance fees. The fees are due in years 4, year 8, and year 12, and if they're not paid, then the patent will expire early. So how does that work? So here's the face of the patent. This is the one by Martin Chalfie on uses of green fluorescent protein. And you can see that this patent was filed before June 8th of 1995. So we look at the date the patent was issued, and it will be 17 years from the date of grant. And so you just add 17 years to 1996, and you come up with February 13th, 2013. February. In another example, this patent was filed on or after June 8th of 1995. And so now we know that that's going to be 20 years from date of earliest priority. Well, what do you mean earliest priority? Okay, so if you look a little bit below the filing date, you see that the priority was referenced to an earlier application that was filed in August 30th of 1996. You also see a provisional application of August 16th, just a few weeks earlier, 1996. But provisional applications don't count. And so we know that then that the continuation in part, August 30th, 1996, is the earliest priority, 20 years from that date. So that brings us to August 30th, 2016. But wait, there's more. It's also possible, as we talked about, if the patent holder doesn't pay fees in years 4, 8, and 12, that the patent might expire early. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So here again, we have another patent. It was filed on or after June 8th, 1995. So we know it's going to be 20 years from earliest priority. We look at an earlier application date, and they do cite a provisional, but provisionals don't affect the term. And so therefore, it's going to be 20 years from the actual date of filing, so April 17th, 2018. But if you had looked at the record for this patent back in 2012, you would have found that the fees have not been paid. So how would you know that? Okay, there's this wonderful, wonderful site that I'm absolutely in love with. And if you haven't visited the Lens, you need to visit the Lens. It is a wealth of information, not only on patents, also on scholarly work. But we're going to focus on the patent side. So, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how to find out what you need. If you're wondering, so you're interested in patented technology, you're wondering if it has, if the fees have been paid, you can find that specific patent by entering the number into the box, and you have to enter it exactly the way that I showed you with the US before, and no hyphens, no spaces. Press the return key, and that will take you to this next page. I show you which link to get the record for the patent, which will take you to this page. And they have lots and lots and lots of information on the Lens about patents for filing fees where specific, it's under legal information. So you click that tab, and you would find that for this particular patent, the fees were paid in years 4 and in year 8, but they were not paid in year 12. And so the patent was declared expired effective October 10th, 2012. And so that's an example of how something falls into the public domain early. Sometimes you don't get so lucky. And it seems to be, and it completely makes sense, that patents that are of high commercial value, the patent holders tend to pay the fees. So this particular patent, we're very interested in at Public Domain Gazette. We It's still in force, but we looked it up and found, darn, they did pay the fees in 4, 8, and 12. And so when we look at the patents, this was filed on or after June 1995. It's reference to a provisional application, but the provisionals don't count. So we count 20 years from the date of filing. So it would be August 16th, 2020, but that's only just like 6 weeks away or something. And so we really like this patent. So we're going to keep watching it until it comes off patent, and then we'll put it into the public domain Gazette. And so speaking of the public domain Gazette, again, I invite you to visit the space. We are looking for volunteers that can help us to become curators of technology, either born free or off patent, that would be useful to the biotech community. You also can sign up for our newsletter and learn more about what we are doing. If you're interested in learning more about patents, I highly recommend these 3 sites. WIPO has a wealth of information, not just on US patents, but patents worldwide. And also the lens we just talked about, and then also the USPTO has wonderful information. And with that, I shall say thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Linda. So you do have a question, which is from Ellen. Can patent terms be extended by continuations?
Yes and no. Okay, if it's a continuation, that means that you've gotten to the point in US patent practice where the examiner has said no, but you want them to keep going. So you file a continuation, and if that's allowed, you can continue to argue back and forth about what claims you want to have issued. But it still dates back to the date of earliest priority. So even though you're continuing to prosecute the patent application, the full term of that patent application will not be longer because it's from the date of earliest priority. There is an exception to that, which is it's called a continuation in part, which means that you get to a certain point in your patent application and you want more, but your original application doesn't describe it. So you file new information, and then that restarts the filing date, but only for the new information, not for anything that was disclosed in the earlier information.
As well, we also have an intellectual property section on the Reclone forum, so if you have questions, please ask. We've deliberately made that one, you can only see it if you're logged into the forum. It's not obviously completely hidden. As soon as you have a login, you can see it, but we just felt it would be a little bit easier to kind of do those conversations not entirely public. And so please do go over there and ask questions. It may not be Linda that answers, but there are quite a few people in the community who've been trying to make stuff open or find open things for a while and can help you out.